Woodsman's Podcast, episode 5.
State of the art.
Hello and welcome to the Woodsman's Podcast for August. We do this podcast at least once a month, and it's for people who are interested in the outdoors. We talk about hunting, harvesting, foraging, and fishing from the perspective of a New England woodsman, specifically New Hampshire, where we are now. My name is Max Ledoux. I'm not a woodsman. The woodsman in question is Ed Butler. Hi, Ed.
Hello.
Ed grew up in New Hampshire and has spent much of his life in the woods or on the lakes or other bodies of water, and he has gained a lifelong knowledge of all of these things. He can also recite poetry. We might get him to do at some point. Today we're going to be talking about fishing mostly, maybe some foraging for berries. And we're also lucky to have our first guest in studio, Marc Patterson. Hey, Marc.
How you doing? It's good to be here.
Thanks for coming.
Hey,
Yeah. So before we get started, just let me say that you can subscribe to the Woodsman's Podcast in iTunes, Stitcher, Google+, or really any other podcast app. Please leave a positive review, particularly in iTunes. That really would help us quite a lot. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Working Class Woodsman. We put out 2 videos per week on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And Marc also has a YouTube channel. We'll put a link in the show notes to that. So we'd appreciate it if you could also give him a sub. And we'd like to say a special thank you to Mac Glavin, who is supporting us on Patreon.
Very generous donation. Yes, appreciate that.
Super cool. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. And also thank you very much to Brian Farni, who's also supporting us on Patreon, but he does not have any YouTube channel. And that's patreon.com/Working Class Woodsman. We'll tell you more about that later. So, guys, I understand that you were just doing some fishing.
Yeah, we had a great day up in the White Mountains, up near Jefferson. Jefferson Notch. Right up there. Yep. Actually, we were probably only a couple miles from Mount Jefferson. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, you just go up the cog. Well, that's Washington, but if you know the road that we went on? Exactly. If you kept going up that, that'll take you up to the base of Mount Jefferson. All right. Yep. Cool. Yep. There's trailheads all over the place. Oh yeah. We were right in the heat of it today, but no, I had a really good day. I think we caught 25 fish, all in all, counting the little natives and stuff.
And what were you fishing for?
Brook Trout. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We did at least 25.
Yeah, I would say.
I mean, there was a lot of catching.
Yeah, we caught, and we lost a few big ones.
I mean, we did 8. Eight in one spot.
In one hole. Yeah.
And we kept none of them.
Right. Nope. Didn't keep
all
any
those
of
were back.
Yep.
Those are small little natives.
Yeah, those were the small natives. Some of them were stocked from the Evans Notch hatchery up there.
Yep. Now, do you know that they're stocked when you catch them? Is there a way to tell, or just from the way they look, their size, or?
Well, generally the size is a giveaway. Like you caught, one of the bigger ones you caught was actually was a native. Yeah. But you can also get what they call a holdover. If a fish doesn't get caught in the summer, and it goes, it makes it through another season, then it becomes what they call a holdover. So it's technically still a stock, but it's been in the river for a year. Right. I caught a couple of those today. But we caught, I don't know, a bunch of the little natives. Just beautiful, dark, blue, red, yellow, almost black. Fish. Oh yeah, they're gorgeous little fish. Yeah.
And will the ones that were stocked, will they breed with the others or with each other at all?
Supposedly. We actually caught a few. A couple of ours still had eggs. Well, they hadn't dropped yet. I'm sorry. But so those would have bred. But I think I'm pretty sure a stock. I can check up on it, but I'm pretty sure a stock brook trout will reproduce if it survives. Mm-hmm. But I don't think any of the stock trout we caught were females. Mm-hmm. I think, but we only caught a couple of those. But anyway, we had a great day. We got up there, started fishing probably about 8 o'clock, and just great day on the river.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In the mountains. Yeah.
Good 6 hours in the woods. I mean, we were getting out around 2-ish. So.
Yeah. By the time we bushwhacked out, it was 2 o'clock. Yep.
Yep.
And after this, we're gonna go home and fry them up, do a little fish fry with native brook trout. So can't ask for more than that.
Cool.
Yeah. So it was a great day in the mountains.
Yeah. Hit the max for the day too.
We limited. Yeah, we caught it. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about that too, because I know is it both a count of how many or poundage, right?
Brook trout. Yeah. Brook trout are 5 fish or 5 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Comes first.
Now let me clarify. Unless you're in a lake like Lake Winnipesaukee, any trout has to be 15 inches.
Uh-huh.
So that's something that's confusing, because when someone catches a brook trout, once in a while you'll catch a little brook trout in Winnipesaukee. You can't keep it because it has to be 15 inches.
Uh-huh.
Because that's what they call basically it's a salmon lake, trout lake. Any place you can only use 2 tip-ups, those fish have to be 15 inches.
Okay.
So that's a bit confusing, because any place else, if it's not like a rainbow, you could keep a 12-inch rainbow in Beach Pond.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
You can't keep a 12-inch rainbow in Winnipesaukee.
So you'll have to explain to me what a 2 tip-up means.
Okay. Winnipesaukee, for instance, or Winnisquam, Ossipee Lake, there any fish that has salmon in them is what we call salmon lakes. So in other words, you can only use two fish in the wintertime, ice fishing. You can only use 2 fishing devices. You can use 2 tip-ups. You can use a tip-up and a jig rod, or you could, in theory, use 2 jig rods. But you can only use 2 fishing devices.
So you can't drill 15 holes and have 15 different devices.
No.
And you say that was specific to Winnipesaukee, or is that
any trout? What they call a lake trout, or any place that they stock salmon. An easy way to figure it is any place that they stock salmon or has lake trout is a 2 tip-up lake.
Gotcha.
Okay, you follow me?
Yeah.
Like Ossipee Lake, for instance.
So if it has salmon in it.
Yeah. Okay. Pretty much. But any other lake like Beach Pond, for instance, you can use 6 tip-ups. Lake Wentworth, you can use 6 tip-ups. Or you'd never use 6 jig rods, but you could use, like, say, 5 tip-ups in a jig rod, but only 6.
Because that's handheld, right?
Yes, correct.
The jig rod is you're sitting there jigging it.
But you can go out. We could go out.
Which for people listening, jigging is like.
We're all doing the hand motion.
We're doing the hand motion here, and people listening are like, "Okay, great. What does jig mean?"
Yeah.
What does it mean?
This is why we got Max. Just keeps things straight.
Jigging is jerking, basically.
A little fishing rod. A little mini ice rod.
And you're sort of jerking it up and down.
Yep. And just to throw in,
which makes the bait sort of appear as if it's a live little fish.
You just sit on the ice and jig. Whether you use a spoon or a jig rod. But I'd like to throw in, if anybody needs a jig rod for ice fishing, Randy Rodco is the best place to get a jig ice fishing.
Yeah.
And you can check him out on Instagram or.
And we'll put those links in the show notes to Randy's.
He's a buddy of ours, and he makes custom ice fishing rods. And he makes a really nice spicy noodle. He also makes one. Yeah.
So he's a cook as well, or
yeah. He makes the Laker Taker. Some of the other names he came up with, but he makes one, the spicy noodle I like for smelt fishing, jigging smelts.
Is that like a really bendy fishing rod?
The reason he calls it a noodle is because the rod is actually parabolic. You know what I mean?
No, I don't know what that means.
Okay, generally a fishing rod has like 2/3 backbone and then the tip flexes.
Okay.
You're following me, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Now a parabolic rod would bend like a complete noodle.
Gotcha.
So there's no backbone. That's called a noodling rod.
Got it.
So that's why he calls it the spicy noodle, because it actually, the whole rod will bend if there's no backbone. But it's good for like a really soft bite, like jigging for smelts or something. Or actually, if you're jigging for white perch with a little, baited tungsten or something, they'll just come over and start nibbling. And that rod, the tip of that rod will just bounce up and down. That's how you know you have a fish on. You set the hook and reel it up. But that's where a noodling rod comes in really handy.
And this is all on the ice, right?
This is on the ice, correct? Correct. Yeah. So we're talking, it's what, 90 degrees up here, and we're talking about ice.
Yeah, today it was almost.
I mean,
Almost.
it feels like we should be.
Yeah.
But so that's not to give you a quick lesson on ice fishing, but so the question was about using two tip ups on Lake Winnipesaukee. I guess is how we got to this. So,
but in other words, in the summer when you're fishing on Lake Winnipesaukee, you can only take how many fish?
Well, you can only take two trout.
2 trout.
Or 1 salmon and 1 trout.
But they have to be more than 15
They have to be
inches.
15 inches. Yeah. A lake trout has to be 18 inches. Okay. Yeah. A salmon, a rainbow, a brook trout, or the trout can be 15. That on that particular lake. But I think what started this whole conversation was what, for instance, on Beach Pond or where we were today, you can keep any size trout.
Uh-huh.
But if you're fishing one of those bigger lakes, it has to be 15.
Yeah, like if I wanted to keep all 5 of those little natives,
you could.
I mean, that would have been my 5 for the day.
Yep, you can keep a 3-inch brook trout if you want.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you can. But anyway, so but those are the good tasting ones, by the way.
The smaller ones?
Oh yeah. Yeah. But you can, you're only going to catch 5, so it's not a lot to eat. But anyway,
more of a side dish,
Yeah, kind of like an appetizer actually. But so anyway, yeah, it was a great day. Caught some really nice fish, and looking forward to having a fish fry.
So of course I forgot to mention at the beginning that Marc is a Registered Maine guide.
True story.
Yeah. and what you do is you lead guided tours on rivers, correct?
Right. I really think of myself kind of like as a guide for hire at this point. So
a hired gun.
Yeah. What have you.
Yeah. That was my term.
That's your term. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. But so the area of specialty is guided river trips, backcountry trips specifically. So we're not doing Saco River floats or stuff like that. It's St. Croix, Allagash region. So the lakes up there.
More remote places.
Remote places, definitely.
Yep. And multiple days.
Multiple days.
Yep.
Absolutely. I think the shortest trip is about 4 days, and then they can go upwards to a week plus. I don't typically go more than a week. That's you can do the entire river portion of the Allagash in 5 days.
Yeah.
That's if you're really putting some backbone into your paddling, kind of haul through.
I don't know why you would. You'd think you'd want to take more time.
Old school. That's an interesting comment about some of the old school guiding, some new school guiding. I do hear that a lot. People want to take a little bit more time and kind of soak in the environment. Old school guides really would wake up their clients early in the morning, and really drive them hard all day, and then get into camp, maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If you reference guys like Chip Cochran, who's still out there doing it, that's the way he did it, that's the way he does it still. Gil Gilpatrick certainly did it that way, and he's definitely one of the more known, guys. So there's this old school thing of just get people out there. Part of that's practicality. By rising early, you, especially like say in the Allagash region where you do have some lakes, you're avoiding some of that nasty headwinds out of the northwest. Where you have that, so the water's more calm in the morning. Also, you're able to work your clients, get the mileage in early, get into camp. If you're arriving at camp at 2 in the afternoon, you're highly likely to get your selection of what sites you want. Now, back in the 80s when the Allagash had that was its heyday, really. You're climbing on top of people to try to find sites. These days, the region is steadily on the decline in terms of, people getting up into that area. So
you used to have to literally compete with other tours.
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
is like I just
read during
the
summer. You've got scouting groups who go out. You've got church groups, youth groups, groups of all kinds. People who just want to get out there and paddle the river.
So you said before we started that you just got back from a scouting trip. Was that? Is it?
So
you
that
don't
was
mean
not
scouts.
a river. That was not a river trip. So
You mean like
yeah?
Boy
So I'm
Scouts?
still actively involved with the Boy Scouts.
Oh, okay.
I was
See,
Boy Scout as a kid, and now that my son is into the Scouts, it's been a nice way to kind of reconnect with scouting.
Cool.
And it also opens up doors to guiding opportunities.
Yeah.
I was offered to be able to, actually 2 offers recently, and I unfortunately had to turn those down because I was booked, which is a good problem to have.
Sure.
But both of those are for scouting groups. And that's often when people would call me up and say, hey, Mark, can you do this trip with us? Is because there's a large group, buddy of mine who worked with my uncle, Jason Cross, and he runs Smoking Rivers Guide Service. He had 30 boys out on the Moose River in Western Maine. That's a large group.
Yeah.
30.
That's
30.
quite a.
That's a busload.
That's well, as boys, that's the kind of size.
Yeah.
How many fathers were came along?
We didn't get that far in the conversation. I was literally, I was hanging deer stands with my uncle on Saturday, and he says to me, now, so my uncle, just for reference, he's the master Maine guide in the family. Okay, so he ran his guiding business, Wilds of Maine, probably for close to 30 years. He retired 2 years ago, and so kind of shut down that whole operation. So anyway, he occasionally still gets calls. And Jason called him up and goes, hey, I've got 30 guys. Can you do it? And he goes, I'm retired. No, I got a full schedule, but call my nephew. Yeah. And then so we're out hanging deer stands, and my uncle's up in the tree, and he looks down and he goes, by the way, what are you doing? I said, what are you doing next week? And I said, I don't know. I got work. I got some stuff I got to do. I've been out traveling. He goes, would you be able to run a river with Jason? I says, well, when does he need me? He goes, well, he's leaving tomorrow. I said, well, I actually have all my stuff in the car. I could fundamentally do it. I said, but, I hold a day job, and my day job boss might not be too happy.
Right.
But you pulled it off.
I didn't do it. No, I couldn't.
Okay, gotcha.
I couldn't pull it.
See, when you said scouting, I thought you were scouting like you were out there by yourself, scouting in advance of like you were going to do a trip.
No, we'll do that.
Else.
I mean, that's a common practice. So I won't guide on a river I haven't run myself.
Right, which makes that seems like a good practice.
I will. I just said that, and now I'm going to go back on that.
Well, we're being recorded, you know that, right?
I will do that in the instance where I'm not a lead guide. If I'm the second or third guide,
right?
And it like.
But the lead guide has scouted it or is familiar.
Absolutely,
somebody.
And I'm only working.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Probably done that river multiple times.
Yeah. And actually next week I'm doing West Branch and Penobscot with Mahoosic Guide Service. And in the spring, I had actually last fall I was out visiting with them, and I had a nice conversation with Kevin Slater over dinner, and his philosophy. And I appreciate his approach about running rivers, because you mentioned the scouting thing, right?
Right.
There are some places I think you absolutely mandatory to scout, to get out there to run them first. And now I could be getting myself in the hot water for saying this, but I do agree with some of his philosophy. If you're really good with reading water, your map work, and you've done the pre-work on research and things like that, and you fundamentally know where you're putting in, your takeouts are, your shuttles, if you've got all the logistics down, you understand that, hey, if we come around this bend, there's going to be a series of rapids. The rapids are class 2, but then you're scouting that stuff out. If you're experienced with the river, there's not always necessarily a need to scout a river first. Now, that said, I don't think I've ever run, I'm not in a situation where I want to lead a trip under that philosophy. But fundamentally, I mean,
like say you ran the same river for 20 years, 6 times a year. Yeah. And like you knew
like
that
the first trip of the year, you don't need to go scout.
And it had rained, like for instance, it had rained heavy the week, like all week. And you'd kind of know.
And there's certain qualities of really good guides up in Maine who literally know the rocks of the rivers.
Yeah. Right.
And Jason, I was just mentioning him, so I'll keep giving him a little credit because you get on that mental. He tells a story of he was doing a trip on the St. Croix, and he would run that river, and my uncle was doing the same thing. That was one of the rivers he started on, and it was the very first river I ever guided for my uncle. So out there, and a client early morning, traditionally get up early in the morning, get out there while the smoke's still in the water, and they're going down, and the client and Jason points out to the client. He said to the client, "Hey, there's a moose over there." And the client's like, "What? That looks like a rock. How'd you know that wasn't a rock?" He goes,
The rock's never been there.
"That's never exactly.
That's not a rock."
Exactly it.
Yeah.
But he's probably seen that frame so many times.
But that's the idea.
Yeah.
That's the idea for what a lot of folks would
and you can
traditionally
think
say.
like maybe it wasn't a moose, maybe it was a bear,
There's something
like and you would it's just a rock and you wouldn't get too close to it,
Somehow
Yeah, but
no, I've actually.
but to drive the point,
Yes.
And then the fishing guides would be the same way. These old guys,
Yep.
the way they would just
So
pound on some of the younger guys.
you're talking about the 80s when there were more people doing tours, and you're talking about some of the older guides. So how did you get into guiding? So your uncle was a guide, so obviously that's got to be one of the reasons. But when did you decide to be a guide? Take us through your whole
No, that's actually
process.
That's a good question.
Like, did you go when you were a child? With your uncle or other people?
I was on rivers. I've got photos pretty young when I was just sitting in the front of a canoe. So my uncle is also an Eagle Scout. Okay, so after he went on, so my father was in the Coast Guard, and I grew up in Connecticut as a young kid, as he was stationed down in Connecticut, and then we moved back up into Maine. When he was really done with that. Secured a job up in Maine. When we did that, my first real Boy Scout troop I was in with my uncle. So my first experiences on, say, Mount Washington, he downhill ski, he's an ice climber. This guy, he's 67 years old. The guy's still an adrenaline junkie as far as I'm concerned. He runs circles around me in the woods.
Yeah, I bet.
So as part of the scout troop, those were my first experiences going out with him, because that's what he wanted to do with his scouts. He would get them up to Tuckerman's Ravine. He would have us hiking up there or skiing. Some of the guys going skiing up in Tuckerman's Ravine. As Boy Scouts, running rivers, doing that sort of stuff. There's a lot of Boy Scout troops who just don't do that stuff.
No,
they're at state park campgrounds and things like that. And I'm not, but that was the kind of thing that I grew up with.
Better there than buying video games.
Yep. So I had an outdoorsy family. We took a lot of vacations where vacation wasn't Disneyland. It was
exactly.
We're going camping, or we're going up to the family camp. It was that sort of deal.
I know when I was big into mountaineering 20 years ago. Yeah, 20 years ago. I would see. I remember seeing. So that would have been 97, 98, let's say. I remember seeing large groups of Boy Scouts up in Tuckerman's.
Yeah.
Because I was up there nearly every weekend, or Huntington.
Yeah.
And I can remember. Yeah, there were a couple of times there were some big groups up there.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many still do that.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's been a while since I've been up there too.
Yep.
But that was my entry point to the whole deal.
Yeah.
However, I would tell you that I didn't go out to get my guide's license, I think, until a little over 4 years ago. So I'm 42 now, so I was 38, right?
That's a good age, though.
It is
to get it. I think I never got mine till last year.
Yeah,
and I was 52 last year. So.
Okay.
Once you get to that age, if it's something you still want to do, it's like, maybe you probably ought to do it. But
there's a little bit. See, I never got my Eagle Scout when I was in the Boy Scouts, and that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's one of the highest honors in life.
But one of the other, when you grow up in a family who is outdoorsy, where I go up to camp, and not only is my uncle up there, but his guiding, but his guide buddies are up there, and you hear the stories around camp as a kid. That's like the Eagle Scout of outdoorsmanship, as an adult a little bit, but I don't. want to downplay it because a lot of it was like I just want to go out there. I want to be able to run rivers. If I can make a little extra, for that, that's great. I don't really necessarily have aspirations of running it full time yet. But taking just a slow approach and enjoying the process.
And kind of build up to it. But something, if you want to hit the eject 5 years from now, it's like you still got the rest of your life to live.
Okay, guys, we're going to pause just for a brief moment, and we want to tell the listeners and the viewers about patreon.com/workingclasswoodsman. We set this up because we got some people asking us, how can we support you? How can we help out? So we set this up. It's patreon.com/workingclasswoodsman, and you can go and sign up to send us $1 or $2 or $3 per month. So we're obviously not trying to get rich off this, but we are sort of trying to maybe build a little bit of a community around this podcast and the YouTube channel. So if you do $1 per month, what we're going to do is we're going to thank you in the podcast, and we're going to do it like every podcast, unless we get like 3,000 of you, and that might be a little unwieldy. But so we're going to thank you for and ask people to check out your YouTube channel or your Instagram. And for $2, what we're going to do is we're going to do that. We're going to thank you and ask people to check out your channel. And we are going to also send you the Working Class Woodsman sticker. And then for the $3, we'll do all of that, and we'll also send you the Working Class Woodsman patch. So we would really appreciate if you want to. You don't have to. You can continue to listen to the podcast. That's what's important. We hope that you enjoy doing that. So that's it. Patreon.com/workingclasswoodsman if you like, and if not, just keep on listening and watching the videos. And if you're not already subscribed on iTunes to the Woodsman's podcast, please do that. And then also youtube.com/workingclasswoodsman. So anyway,
is it possible to do to guide tours without being a registered Maine guide?
No. It is not. So they call it remuneration for services. Anything that you receive remuneration for services rendered in the outdoors in Maine requires you especially under. So if I guided a hike, I could guide a hike and as a volunteer not get paid.
Right.
No,
so like the Boy Scout leader,
different.
Because he's not being paid for
Absolutely.
it.
As a volunteer.
Only if you're being paid.
It's only if you're being paid. Yep.
Yeah.
And we were just
In
talking
cash or
any way you want.
Any way you.
You can take lira, shillings, Twinkies, anything. If you're receiving remuneration, like if you say, for instance, I'll give you some.
Yeah, they don't say currency.
No.
Remuneration. I mean,
what if I was to say, okay, I'm going to take you. You're going to take me on a canoeing. Like, say I'm not a guide.
Sure.
Okay, but I'm a taxidermist. And you're going to take me on a canoe trip, and I do your deer head for you, in lieu of the canoe trip.
Yeah, that's compensation, right?
Technically, yes.
Compensation.
Technically, yes.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
In that is as bizarre as that sounds, although it's probably happened.
Yeah.
Marc would have to be a registered Maine guide in order for me to do the deer head in lieu of the.
But it's also, just like think about it like in practical terms, like. You don't want to go to like a chiropractor if he hasn't received all of his certifications and things like that.
So my next question.
But they're a lot less expensive.
Yeah.
I don't need all those.
Who are the chiropractors?
If he's not certified.
If he's not certified, yeah. Well, I was gonna ask.
He's the front store.
Got a portable table.
Back of it.
Got a table he pulls out of his van. All right, Larry.
He's in the corner of a nail place.
Right.
Yeah, do you think that is a legitimate thing that you have to be registered?
Absolutely.
Any day, all day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's and in fact, when we were kind of having this conversation, for the type of what you're being asked to do, it's really a bare minimum.
It is bare minimum.
The Registered Maine Guide test is said to be the toughest test to pass for any wilderness.
So
guide.
let's talk about that. How hard is it?
75% of those who take it fail on the first round.
And it's usually
Really?
navigation. It's either navigation
okay.
or oral.
Yeah.
So I
That's where
don't
they
want to
fail.
put you on the spot,
No.
but did you pass it on the first test?
I passed everything except for the. I didn't pass the oral on the first test. They docked me a point on the lost person scenario. So they give you. I passed everything: the written, the map and compass.
Yeah.
There's like 2 parts of the oral, but they give you a lost person or a catastrophic scenario.
And they
One
feel,
of the 2.
and that's variable depending on how they feel about a particular individual.
So,
You know.
and that's extremely subjective. So, you know, I won't have to name names, but what I had was 2 cranky wardens after lunch and late in the afternoon.
It was Friday.
Yeah, and the guy basically pulled out a map and dropped it on the table in front of me and gave me a scenario and just kind of puts his finger on the thing and left the whole thing very open and vague. And I'm asking questions. No, and he's now we're kind of like almost a little combative. And I was looking for clarification about this scenario, and he really wasn't.
I'm not trying to be the devil's advocate, but I think sometimes that's their way of seeing how you handle a situation. They're trying to
with them
or anything.
Yeah.
In other words, like if all of a sudden you're confrontational in an air-conditioned room with 2 older gentlemen, how are you going to be when you get a guy with a bone sticking out of his leg?
Right,
But
and somebody else who's flipping out, and
And I'm not
afraid.
that may be a strategy. It may not.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's a strategy I would play.
Yeah.
If I was
Seems reasonable.
If the tables were turned.
Yeah.
But I think anyway. Go ahead.
No. But that was to sum it up. I mean that was kind of it. Like I kind of went through the scenario.
So they docked you a point for that, but did you still pass? Or?
Well, they pull you back in and say, this is what I wanted to hear you say. You said this. Technically, yes, the situation kind of, but I didn't hear what I wanted to hear. Come back in 30 days.
Yeah.
So you go back in 30 days. And I think that's the other part. A lot of people just don't go back. Right.
Well, and that's an indication too that they're like,
absolutely.
If you don't come back, then.
And I'll actually tell you that the second situation that they gave me, because that was the only part you have to retest on. I don't have to go through the written and all that other stuff again, right? The only part that they retest you on is that situation. So again, I knew walking in I was going to get a lost person or a catastrophic situation, and I just had a different group the second time. The second time it was a warden and a couple retired guys. And it was actually much more conversational there. Yeah. They hit me with this, and I don't want to too many spoilers, but they hit me with this. They go, "Oh, so what do you plan to do? When you get your license?" And that's the difference too. When you're at an oral, those guys are intimidating. So what screwed me up wasn't my lack of knowledge. It was I've got these 2 old cranky wardens
who coincidentally you have a lot of respect for.
Absolutely.
Because
by the way, I should be very clear about that.
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. These wardens are tough because they need to be. Yeah. I have the utmost respect for any and all the wardens. Yeah. That is a hard job. And if you put in the time and done that, and you're testing. I mean, those guys are tough and they need to be tough.
Yeah.
Because like you said, they want to weed out the.
Absolutely.
We've got a new term, the Volvo guy.
Yeah.
The guy that just wants the patch.
Right.
It's like they don't.
That's right.
It's like they're really trying to get people who are getting certified to go out and do and guide
and understand that you can do that. Right.
And I think like in my scenario, the same thing. I mean, I had the oral first, which I passed. But they'll give you. They gave me 14 no-win situations.
Yeah.
And basically,
that's the other thing. All the situations that you're going to get are no-win situations.
Yeah. I mean, they may say, you've got to, and I'll throw generations.
Yep.
A boy, a father, and a grandfather. They've shot a bear.
Yep.
Now you've got you've left the father with the bear, and you're going to bring the grandfather and the grandson back to the camp, and then go back and get the bear. Well, you end up running over the grandfather with a pickup truck. What do you do? That's a scenario.
Yeah.
Now, Okay, it's not going to get any worse as long as you don't run over the kid.
So I'm going to ask
Yeah.
you, Joe, was that a lost person scenario? Or is that catastrophic?
That's catastrophic. That's my idea of catastrophic.
You might have lost a person.
Because
too,
no
yeah.
one's lost. I know where he is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Under the
I'm
truck.
on the other side.
Yeah.
You've lost it.
It's, like I might be getting but anyway.
Yeah.
So, but that may be a scenario. So it's like, and realistically, that could conceivably happen.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
You've got an exciting situation. You've got a kid. You've got an exciting situation. People aren't thinking 100% like they should be. Those things happen.
Well, and I actually think, because what you brought up is interesting. Like, they're going to give that example to someone who's, say, interested in hunting, right?
Yep.
So what I actually appreciated about the second go around with the test was the gentleman actually took a moment to ask me and say, "Hey, so what do you intend to do with your guide's license?"
Right.
I said, "Well, I'm interested. Wilderness is canoeing is my thing." "Oh, all right. Well, where do you intend to guide? Your river trips?" Right. I said, "The Allagash. That's the obvious go-to, right?"
Sure.
And I don't know who these guys are. Well, it turned out that the retired Maine guide guided the Allagash for some 30 years. He goes, "Great. So you're at Round Pond Rips. You're here, and da-da-da-da-da." Like, he painted the scenario right there on the river and made it a very practical scenario.
And you're standing on the, the 3-ton round boulder, not the 2-ton, oblong,
Absolutely.
boulder
So-
on the right that's half gray.
That's right. No.
Yeah.
Realistically,
And-
that's probably what he's.
Yeah, and he wanted to know that he wanted to see that I had knowledge. So what I had, again, a catastrophic situation, a broached canoe, one gentleman, two in the canoe. I've got a party of 6 total,
Mhm.
3 canoes. They broach the wrong way. Okay, so there's the right way when you lean into the rock, and then the wrong way when you don't. And now your canoe's filled up with water and it weighs a ton. It's,
So I got you. Yeah, if it tips away from the rock, then water is
correct.
pushing
So if
into
you're
it.
going downstream and you're going to tip your canoe, you want to lean downstream,
forward into
lean
the rock.
forward into the rock.
Yeah. So
One,
that
you have a
the
better shot
current
that
is
pushes-
hitting the bottom of the canoe.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, you can wrap your canoe around the rock. It's very heavy. You've got the current coming into it.
You've got thousands of pounds of hydraulics
Yeah.
hitting you. It's the strength of that water is just you can't imagine.
So that was my scenario. So I got one
And
guy.
so the
floating
scenario
downstream.
was
So
you're
you approached the wrong way.
the wrong
The
way.
guys broached the wrong way. Somehow, the one guy got on the other side of the canoe, pinned his leg.
Okay.
So he's pinned with the canoe pushing up
Yeah.
against him.
Well,
And
so
the
he
other
can't go
guy-
anywhere, so
and
that's
the other
good.
guy's floating downstream.
Right.
And I've got 2 other canoes in the water.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Right. And it was basically go. Right.
Okay.
And what do you do?
So
And so, I kind of took him through that. But before that, I kind of paused and I talked a little bit about, hey, by the way, before we get into the scenario, I just want to let you know that when I do a river trip, we go through a lot
There you
of
go.
pre stuff.
Yep.
I have taught all my clients not only paddling techniques, but, self-rescue techniques, So I said, I have a question for you. I said, is my guy who's floating down the river doing the self-rescue technique the way that I would have instructed? I just told them that's what they're looking for.
Right.
They want to know that you know that stuff.
Right.
It was easier for me the second time because it was in my wheelhouse. It wasn't this out of context. The first time I went through, again, and I'm unnecessarily picking on the wardens. I should, I got to take my responsibility in that too. But I had a very abstract lost person scenario.
right.
In the second situation, when I came back, I was very cool and confident because I'm working in my wheelhouse. Like, we're on a river, right? And I knew what I needed to do. I knew what I needed to do with the Z-drag to get the canoe off him, to, make a signal to everybody, eddy out. Now we need to get the canoe off this guy. I got to get out there. I got to pull upstream to get him out from underneath that canoe, and I can give instructions to these people. I can administer first aid on this guy. The other guy's getting out. Now I can treat the 2 guys for hypothermia. But it being a no-win situation, and the other guy go into cardiac arrest. So, and
The guy who's floating down the river?
right.
Yeah.
No, not the guy who was floating down the river. The guy who broke his leg was pinned, and now he's wet. So it's just they're gonna keep piling one thing after the other, but they do again. That's what they're looking for. It's not about the situation. It's about what are you doing and what can you show them that you know what you're doing when you're out there. Now going back to the bare minimum part where we started from, I just said all that.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, I've never had to do a river rescue on anyone.
Okay.
Right now, I've practiced river rescue techniques.
Right.
I'll practice every season. I go out and do Z-drag, set all that stuff up because I'm a firm believer if you're not doing it, it's redundancy. You need to do it. It's like playing a song on a musical instrument, right? Like if you don't play that song, you're not going to perfect that
You're
song.
going to forget it.
You're going to forget.
The
You're going to get rusty, and I don't want to be rusty when I'm in the woods.
The other good thing about practicing, not even in like canoe rescues, but any given situation, like any emergency situation, the more you practice it, the more you realize what you really need to have with you for equipment.
Absolutely.
Whereas, like a lot of times, if you haven't put a lot of that stuff into practice, you end up carrying around a lot of stuff you're never going to use.
Right.
So,
or opposite, you don't bring the stuff that you really.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly. Yeah.
You see the other thing happening. So yeah, it's that's why I say it's a minimum. Because again, the minimum for Registered Maine guide as far, and I think we were chatting about this as well. Yeah. On the first aid end is American Red Cross.
Yeah,
I mean that's a and the industry standard for outdoor recreation anywhere. You work with Knowles out west. You work with anyone anywhere is wilderness first responder
or a woofer.
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 Right.
Yeah, that term. That's what it is. Wilderness first responder.
So there are things, and then I actually am a strong proponent that I would like to see that as the standard. I also would like to see.
So that's a higher standard than Registered Maine guide.
It's basically an EMT with no ambulance.
It's one step beneath an EMT.
Yeah, without an ambulance.
Right.
Because think about it. With an ambulance, an EMT with an ambulance, you've got all the equipment in the ambulance. You're only going to be with that patient, let's say 15 minutes.
Right.
Okay. Right. In a wilderness scenario, you might be with them for 24 hours. Yeah. 48 hours.
Right.
So it's a question of really making them comfortable, really realizing, recognizing, are they in shock?
Yep.
Are they, medications, you get into that scenario.
Yeah, I had a campfire conversation just about the issue of CPR and how the practice of CPR changes, front country CPR, they're still teaching, like in the parking lot, like if someone fell over, outside, it's still like compression and breaths.
Yeah.
In the woods, you just beat on their chest. Like it's just
and you break their ribs and puncture a lung.
And after a certain amount of time, actually, and they built this into the wilderness first responder course, you're actually taught that it's okay to stop CPR. I think after 20 minutes, somewhere right around there. I think it was 30. I think they reduced it to 20. Most people would still do. I mean, one person's not doing CPR for 30 minutes. If anyone's done chest compressions on a dummy, you know that you get winded after about a minute or two.
Because it's the amount of effort you're putting in.
So hopefully, and that's what we did in our catastrophic situation. I said, I've got 4 good guys here plus myself. We all take turns doing CPR on this guy who's having cardiac arrest.
Right. Because if you're in the parking lot of, Hannaford or whatever, and somebody has a heart attack or whatever, and you're doing CPR you're only doing CPR on them until the ambulance arrives.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
if you're doing good
minutes.
CPR, actually, the EMTs would instruct you if they feel that you're doing good CPR, continue doing good CPR. Well, because that frees up the EMTs to be able to deal with some of the other stuff they need to do. That said, in the back country, when you're trained,
you're a day out into the woods.
You know what? Even if you're not, like, just say you're 2 hours, right? Like, just say in that situation, I could have gotten to a ranger station within an hour, but how am I going to get a guy? We need to do CPR. How am I going to get to the ranger station and back?
You got to put them in a litter.
At the end of the day, it's about how do I make that person comfortable as they are dying, and also, as grave as it is, to just be there with them as they go through that dying process. And I think that's the angle that some of this wilderness stuff gets, because it is different.
Because it's realistic.
But you need, so I'm a strong proponent that needs to be a basic requirement. I'm also a strong proponent that, in Mahoosuc Guide Service offers this, is river rescue. They spend a few days doing river rescue. Like, if you're going to be a river guide, you go out every, say, other year, same as you do with your wilderness first aid and first responder, and recertify on river rescue. Because it just reinforces that.
Well, river rescue is pretty complex too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much to think about.
There's so
everything.
much.
You know, the temperature, I mean, it's just so much.
Yeah.
There's so many scenarios.
So anyway, yeah.
But no,
that's me.
But again, back to what we were saying. You know, even though the Maine Guide certification is the hardest in the country to get, it's still very minimal as compared to what you may get into. You know,
Right.
And like
Right.
the other thing, most people I think fail. A lot of people fail in navigation.
Yeah.
Many, and that's tricky because
And that's taking compass bearings.
well, you know, they like you said, the guy comes over, puts a map in front of you. It's like, oh, you get 15 minutes, and it gives you two scenarios: distance, back azimuth, bearings, true magnetic back azimuth, whatever the scenario.
Yeah.
You get 15 minutes on a map that isn't what you're expecting.
No.
So, and I don't want to, again, I don't want to tell tales out of church, because if you want to get certified, go get certified. But, there's a couple of different ways to pass it. And my only advice is, however you're going to do it, and however, like, if you use a protractor, if you use, depending on how you orient, whatever, do it the way you usually do it. Because if you go in there and try to reinvent the wheel, or, you're not going to pass.
Right.
UTM. I mean, anyway, there's a lot of people do fail in navigation. I think. Actually, I know they do.
Yeah.
And
I think it's an issue of. I think it's an issue of one, just it's a bare minimum skill set kind of going in there, and then two, possibly an issue of nerves, because you've got that time limit. You've got those guys standing there watching what you're doing on that paper.
And
you can only be your margin of error is what, like 1 degree? They give you a degree.
Well, then that's interesting. Yes, it is.
So if you do your calculate, like after you've adjusted for declination, all that sort of stuff, because your compass that you're testing with isn't going to be one that you set declination on. So you're actually doing the math, right? And Maine has depending 15 to 16 degrees of declination.
Depending on the map they give you. Depending on the map that they give you. But
so you also have to be able to write, okay, so where is this map and what's the declination?
But they have to tell you the magnetic declination.
It'll be on,
it'll be on the map. So in other words, they can't give, that's.
And as long as you ever had a map, that would be on the map.
Yeah. That's part of the legend.
That's part of the legend. Yeah. But again, it's funny because you got 15 minutes, and you're trying to you're trying to focus on what you're doing, but you've burned up 10 minutes,
right?
And all of a sudden you got 5 minutes, Ed. And you want to double check, but if you go back and double check, then you
burned up your time.
Yeah,
15 minutes is not a long time. And like I say, those maps wasn't what I was expecting.
Okay.
But I just said, you know what? The way I went in there, it's like, okay, I got 3 ports. It's like, I'm not worried. I'm not thinking about the oral. It's like, I have to do this. And once I did that, the funny thing is he takes it back, flips it over, and starts right in with the oral. So I don't know how I did on navigation. Now I'm doing my oral thinking I failed that.
In the back of your head, you're like, I already screwed up.
So I'm like, forget it, Ed. Put it out of your brain. Just concentrate on what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It was with me. It was fun. Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was nerve-wracking. I'm not going to lie to you, but I did, like I said, I did pass it. But anyway, it was a great experience, and hopefully, I'm going back to get my hunting certification. I wanted to have it by now, but I've been so busy doing other stuff, I haven't had a chance. But that's my goal, is to get my hunting and fishing certification.
Guide certification.
I think that'd be great
to lead hunting or fishing trips.
Yeah. Bear hunting.
So there's 5 classifications. I guess we didn't really say that here, but there's 5
there is now.
classifications.
Yeah.
And so you've got hunting, fishing, recreation, which I'm recreation.
Right.
Recreation actually covers all recreational activities. So ATV, boat,
stand-up paddleboards.
stand-up paddle boards.
And there's questions on the test about stand-up paddleboards.
So that's the other thing. It's like, even though I said my area of specialty is, say, canoeing, right? Wilderness canoeing specifically, I actually have to be well versed in snowmobiling, ATV use, motorized boats. Because I have a commercial boats operator license that comes with the guide's license. So all those things I'm actually getting tested on. I may never do anything on a snowmobile.
But you have the
in my life.
potential.
Yeah.
Once
it's
you get
there,
that
it's an option.
certification, you can take somebody out on an ATV tour. You can take somebody out.
Yep.
Now, the other two, sea kayaking.
Yep.
And
saltwater.
What do they call it?
Yeah, I was going to ask about that too, because the wardens are part of the Department of Inland.
Correct. They work for the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife.
Right. So they're not saltwater.
No, they do everything.
They do? Because I thought that there was a different
I mean, if you're on the coast and you're fishing for striped bass,
yeah,
that still falls under the fishing game.
Yeah, that's fishing game.
Huh.
Yeah, the boating.
I thought there was a whole thing like they had to test like the water to see whether it was salt water to see who had jurisdiction, like in some of these areas where there's a tide going up the river.
Oh, you mean you're talking like brackish water?
Yeah, like because the game wardens, I thought were only inland. So like if it's salt water, they're not.
I don't know where they stop. I mean, I think as far as like if you're doing a duck hunting, like say I'm taking somebody hunting for sea ducks.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're in a boat and we're out.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's fishing department.
Yeah, like I've never had a state trooper ask for my fishing license when I'm.
No. No, and the Coast Guard's not going to stop and ask you. He's not going to.
Right, because they're
guide certification.
They're federal.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, that's a good question. I mean, it's
a great.
I don't have much.
I've never thought about it because I don't do anything out there.
Out on the ocean, right?
We're not certified for that.
Right.
I'm not certified for that. So,
but
it's a great.
Well, here on the Woodsman's podcast, we don't have all the answers, but we
stay
also
in the woods.
don't BS you when we don't have the answers.
No, and again, because so it does break. Now it's 5 different.
You got that Google app?
Oh yeah. Worst case scenario, we'll look it up on Google.
Right.
But yeah, so that would fall. But I'm pretty sure, like in a duck, I'm saying sea ducks, I hunt. Pretty sure that falls under Fish and Game, Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife.
So
it has to. Yes, it does.
Sure.
Yeah, I know it. But anyway, so.
So if there's a decline in people going on tours.
Oh man, that's a whole other podcast.
No.
Is there a decline in people getting their certification?
No.
So there are more guides.
But
fewer clientele.
Well, okay. So most people that go,
Go ahead, go. You can say any. This is the Woodsman podcast. You can say anything you want.
Yeah. Well, it's a slippery slope. Okay, so think about. Okay, so for wilderness canoeing, I can probably say that there are less than 10 full-time Maine guides who have, like I said, full-time. That's what we do.
Right.
However, how many? I mean, there's something like 4,000 to 5,000 registered Maine guides in total.
I don't.
So
right.
So there are a lot of people who are
10
not doing anything.
Batch holders.
Right.
Yeah.
Who are
I'm one of them.
holders.
I'm not okay. I'll take some heat. I'm not physically guiding right now, but I'm certified.
Yeah.
I don't wear.
Well,
I don't wear my.
What am I doing? I'm a part-time.
But you just came. But you are guiding.
I am.
Yeah.
I am.
But there are people that get that patch to wear to the coffee shop or to sew on their brand new. I don't want to start sewing.
Right.
But no, there is a trend of people who
and I guess that's what I was saying about the testing process. When I said, well, I just explained all this, but I've actually never gone and actually had to do.
Right.
I've never had a catastrophic situation. So a lot of times there are folks who get that test who have no business being in the woods, really. You don't need to be a woodsman to get that guide badge. You just need to have the knowledge to pass that test.
Right.
Yeah. That's the slippery slope there.
And the thing is, there
are a lot of those people.
Yeah, there's a lot of cases where someone would be a very competent guide because of their hands-on, just their character and who they are and how they grew up and how they live their lives. Whereas they may be horrible at taking tests.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like anything else. It's like I did good on the, like I said, but I don't, historically, I don't test well. I never have.
Right.
So that was my concern. I was like, geez, I'm never going to do it. I just don't test well.
In terms of getting the certification from the state, and it's, like you talked about, you don't want to go to
a surgeon who's not
Right.
got some kind of certification.
Right.
But on the flip side, you might, you have somebody who's like, well, I have the certification, so I can leave you, but they're a total moron.
So
You know.
but here's the other barrier to access, if you will, on that one. That and this is why I, by the way, am kind of like a gun for hire, if you will. Keep
Hired gun.
Hired gun. Right.
Hired gun.
If you're running a guide outfit, like, so next week I'll be out with Music Guide Service, like I said, we're doing West Branch at Penobscot.
Mhm.
I have all insurance for myself, but I don't have, I'm not an LLC. I don't have, a business, the liability insurance and all that. If you're going to take folks out, you gotta have that.
You got to have liability, and that was actually the first thing the Wood asked me.
So there are people who, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
They got the patch. They earned the patch. They can do it. Would I recommend ever booking a trip with somebody who has not properly set up a business and is insured, who has their paperwork in line? Though that's where you really separate, the wheat from the chaff.
I think a good idea is once you get your certification, I think you should then begin an apprenticeship.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, you should go to work for a guy.
Right. In other words, it's a beginning.
I'll give you an example. My buddy Tim, Jack Mountain Bushcraft.
Yeah.
Right. Chris and those guys.
Yep.
They went through this Tim's his school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is
Jack Mountain Bushcraft.
Jack Mountain Bushcraft, which is he does 9 week submersion courses. I mean, it's pretty extensive.
Yeah.
They went through that original course, decided they wanted to put their feet in the water. They got the certification, and they work under Tim. As guys.
Right.
And I think that's great because they're thrown into they're thrown into it, but they're also under the supervision of someone who's been doing it for 20 years.
Right.
So
they all have the certification, equal certification, but
Tim's a master.
But he's Oh, that's another level, or
absolutely.
Okay.
You can earn that after 10 years. But you're right.
Yeah. Right. But he's also Tim is recreation, hunting, fishing, and he also has sea kayak.
Yeah. So I have two thoughts on all that, though.
Yep.
So I brought that up to the ward because that was my uncle's stipulation with me, right? Because he's very old school that way, and that's exactly his deal. He's basically like, go get the Registered Maine guide patch, and then you mentor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're the apprentice.
Yep.
And that came up in my conversation with the wardens when they were testing me, on the second go round actually. And they said to them, they don't care. Because as soon as you have that patch, you could be out there guiding.
Yeah.
So I think I would agree with you. I think it's the best practice. It's not a required practice, but I believe it is the best practice. And that's actually why I'm operating the way I am. Because I don't want to run my own guiding outfit. I actually want to work with several folks who have extensive experience. Every time I go into the woods, it doesn't matter what I do. Today we were fishing, right?
Yep.
And you were cleaning a fish, and I was like, oh, you leave the heads on. Like, I have always cleaned my fish a different way, right?
Sure. Yeah.
It's perfectly legitimate, right?
Right.
But you kind of walked me through and said, no, I do this, I do this, I do this. Oh, that's...
Now you can either be like, oh, I'm going to do that now, or you're going to be like,
that's
Ed.
stupid.
or I got to pick the scenario how I do it, how I want.
Or not completely adopt it, but sort of incorporate parts of it.
You have options.
But there's
exactly.
But it's the same thing in the guiding world. And the more experience you can get working with other guides and building a community and building a network. If I spend a week up with Tim Smith, I guarantee he's going to have a few nuances. We're going to do a lot of things fundamentally the same, but he would do things different than what I'm about to experience with, Mahoosuc Guide Service next week. And they all know each other. And then my uncle's got his own particular way about doing things. Yeah. And when you can get that exposure, you're just building your bank of tools. And you're really helping to find, okay, well, I can choose to accept this. I can choose to reject that technique.
Well, to make for kind of an analogy, I mean, I own a heating business. I've been doing it 33 years, and I started, with a match. I didn't know anything. And over the years, from working with so many different guys, I've worked with some really good guys over the years. I've worked with some not so. But even today, if I went out with someone else doing a hydronic system or a radiant system, I would learn something from that person.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And well, and, you know, because, you know, yes, products change, yes, times change, but the point is, like, every time I go out with someone else who has equal or more or even less experience, I always learn something.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a two-way street. They learn from me as well. But
Right.
so it's the same like in guiding. Like if you work with 3 different guides, you can work with 3 different river companies, and they're all going to do things a little bit different. But from all of those, you're gonna get something from all of those, and you're gonna make it your own.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's and again, back to the mentor thing. I think realistically, it should be. I think personally, myself, like I would love to go to work for another. I'd like to go to work for a guiding company and guide bear hunts under someone else's,
Right.
you know, not umbrella, but
Yep.
you know,
And there's plenty of them out there that hire.
yeah.
Right.
So rather than start my own, which I guess, I probably could, whatever. I would rather go to work for another guiding company.
Yeah.
To do bear hunts or do upland game, whatever.
Yeah.
And just to get into like, well, that's a good idea because I wouldn't have thought of that. I probably wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah.
And it's just good practice, and I think that should be kind of not. It should probably maybe be mandatory.
Yeah, some sort of mentorship program.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's mandatory,
I say
I
mandatory.
think it should be encouraged
it should be encouraged.
It should definitely be encouraged.
And it also too, it does depend on the individual. There are people I think that could. I mean, I know people that are 22 years old that are completely capable of guiding someone.
Yeah.
And I know people that are my age that, you probably. I wouldn't recommend going with that guy. It's it depends on the individual.
But how does the potential client find that out?
Well, unfortunately, sometimes they find out the hard way, and I know of a few.
Like when they've breached their canoe the wrong way and they're pinned to a rock.
Not that. I mean, I've again, I'm from New Hampshire, and the New Hampshire guiding is, and for the record, to be a New Hampshire guide now is a lot harder than people think it is.
Yeah,
it's getting harder, and it's right around the corner. They're trying to get recreation right now. In New Hampshire, you only need to be registered as a hunting and fishing guide. There's no rec guide.
So in New Hampshire, you can take somebody on a canoe trip.
Take them on ATV,
and for remuneration.
You could take them above tree line in January.
Yep.
No problem. So that they're really working on that. Like everything else, it gets fought. Yeah. And again, it's not going to apply to guys taking out Cub Scouts. It's not going to take
right.
But no, if you're taking somebody down the Saco, I think you ought to be certified.
And that's like what we talked about a couple episodes ago about passing legislation, because I imagine that you're going to change that wouldn't that require legislation here in New Hampshire?
Yeah. And that's where it all gets.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of folks who are actively working in that community. A lot of those guys up in the White Mountains who do the rock climbing, or those are the ones that would be most impacted, I think. Guides, who might operate. A lot of folks work through AMC and other things like you can.
What is AMC stand?
Appalachian Mountain Club. So there's a few organizations up in the White Mountains who.
Not American Motor Company.
Well, you too. You also have the theater.
There you go.
So
I'm just trying to throw you.
No.
Go ahead.
I threw one right back at you.
Oh, yeah.
But you have a lot of organizations that, unfortunately, those people, because those White Mountains don't belong to the Appalachian Mountain Club, right? So if someone's guiding up there, like I have a buddy of mine who, he's a registered Maine guide. The reason why he went out for his is because he was working for Sunday River. And Sunday River at a certain point had decided they wanted to do some guided ski trips or led ski trips off the property. Yep. Right. The second you go off the property, those employees had to go and get their guide's license. So that's going to impact a lot of people if that
Oh yeah.
So they'll be scrambling to figure out, well, okay, this is how I make my money. Like I'm not going to have to scramble so much, right? I do precious few. I did a few guided hikes up in the Whites mainly to folks who are fairly new to the area and wanted, a weekend trip. How does that get structured and things like that? How do I know what, there's 4,000 footers, which one's going to kill me or which one can I take my kids on? It's like, okay, I can help you with that process and get out there with you. I just found that I didn't particularly care for it.
All right, we're going to do one more little small commercial. Stop wasting time when publishing videos on YouTube. TubeBuddy is a free browser extension. That's TubeBuddy. TubeBuddy is a free browser extension that integrates directly into YouTube to help you run your channel with ease. Other products require you to leave YouTube in order to access their functionality, but not with TubeBuddy. Their toolkit's features load right within YouTube's website in line with your daily workflow, allowing more time to make great content. TubeBuddy streamlines productivity and provides tools for bulk processing of videos, video SEO, that's search engine optimization, video SEO, promotion, and data and research. Here at the Working Class Woodsman YouTube channel, I use the thumbnail generator to easily create great thumbnails right in the browser. I also use the vid-to-vid tool to insert links to our most recent video into the video descriptions of all the videos on the channel. We have like 350. I say we, but most, 330 of them were Ed alone. But to start using the free TubeBuddy extension, go to tubebuddy.com/WCW603. WCW603. At tubebuddy.com/WCW603. The pro version of TubeBuddy is also very reasonably priced and totally worth it. And there's even a 50% discount for new YouTubers with fewer than 1,000 subscribers. 50% off. And it works out to, I don't have it in front of me, but it's like less than $5 per month. And it's definitely worth it. So check that out, tubebuddy.com/WCW603. Thanks a lot. So anyway.
So you think, you had kind of mentioned this, like, is there a different, so do you think canoe, and I've got a few different answers on this, but do you think canoe trips are less and less people are doing canoe trips than they were 20 years ago?
It's an issue of both access and people who want to take time off. So say, for instance, we're going to do this West Branch trip. That's 6 hours of driving to get up to, from where we're at right here. Yeah. That's approximately 6 hours of driving just to get to the rendezvous. Never mind so you really have to have almost a day on the either end for travel. A lot of folks who do it, I can tell you a lot of my uncle's clients were folks from out of state. Also, price becomes a barrier. It's costly to run those trips. The North, you talk about food, the sheer overhead. A lot of folks don't really think about. You've got to supply food for all of your folks for the week, plus a little extra in case.
Well, it's a couple $100 a day for food, right? Like say 6 people.
Yeah. So the rough math is about $15 per person per day.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, so you can just do it that way. Roughly say $200. But anyway, you've got fees for the North Woods, so you've got all the the shuttle services, to move the car from point A to point B. So when you start thinking about these costs, to run a trip, say on the Allagash for a week, I think the average industry standard rate is somewhere in the $1,200 to $1,300 range or up.
Right.
So think about
if people are coming from out of state, are they flying in?
Then they've got to play
Portland,
flight, hotel. So one, it's the time it takes. So to comfortably run the river only section, that's a 6 to 10 day trip. If you did all the lakes and the river, you're going to push 10 days, right? Mm-hmm. So you're almost taking 2 weeks of work off to go play on a river, or at minimum a week off, right? Mm-hmm. So you're taking your full week vacation, and there's just fewer folks these days who want to do that. They'd rather just go do something else.
Well, the thing is, if you get 2 weeks a year and you've got a family, and you've got 2 kids, and like everybody wants to go to Disneyland, so that's 1 week,
right?
And you got to talk to your wife and your kids into spending 4 days in a canoe up in Maine. I mean, that's not an easy sell. Yeah.
Unless,
some people will do it.
absolutely.
But
there's actually, I think, more people than you would think not. But like, here's a great situation. I've got a client who's coming with me, who I brought on to this trip from Mahoosic next week. So he's taking a week away from his family. His family's not coming with him, right?
Yeah.
So he's shelling out the money for the trip, plus the travel, and he's taking a week of vacation, not with his family, right? So again, go back to your situation. You get 2 weeks of vacation or whatever a year, he's, taking roughly half of that. And most people get a little bit more than that, but, so there's an issue of access. The North Maine woods is not as developed. I can be, from my house, I can be up in the White Mountains in 2 hours.
Yeah.
So, when I think about it, like a family vacation or just taking time off, I mean, what's more attractive? Spending 2 days in the car going to and from, or can I be in the White Mountains in 2 hours? Now, my preference is the North Maine woods all day long. I don't want to be with all the folks from Massachusetts. No slight to the folks from Massachusetts, but I don't want to be with surrounded by hundreds of them.
How many? I'll give you an example. Like on our ride out to this morning.
But that's what I'm talking about.
How many cars did we see parked beside the road? 1,000?
It was packed.
I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
From like we came out, let's say up around Bretton Woods. Okay.
Yeah.
We came out there. If we didn't see 1,000 cars beside the road, maybe
wasn't a whole lot of places to put a car at that point. I mean, at 2 in the afternoon.
Geez. I mean, and it
For
was
just a huge long stretch.
Yeah. I mean, it was just every trailhead, at the
all the way down to Crawford now.
at the top of the notch. They were parked out by the pond. They were parked. I mean, there were 300 cars there.
Yeah.
And every parking lot was full. So what you see is a lot of high impact use.
Oh yeah.
You go up in northern Maine and not see a person for 2 days.
Yep.
Right.
No, that's absolutely true. When I did the Moose River this spring, I went out there and I was out there for 4 days and only saw a couple of the people.
We were on the Blackwater and we didn't see anybody.
Yeah.
In part of the St. Croix stream, and I don't think we saw one other canoe. Like I say, when we were fishing.
Yep.
How many people did we see? We probably saw a dozen people.
Saw a dozen people,
and they weren't fishing.
Most of those folks weren't fishing. There was one other fisherman. A few folks. There was a point that was fairly easy access, and they came in to use it as a swimming hole.
We went up to Diana's baths.
We just pushed
years ago.
There you go.
Yeah.
And there were hundreds of cars.
So I guess
and
that's
people.
Yeah.
So
this is for people who don't know, it's up near Conway, New Hampshire, and it's
beautiful place.
Beautiful waterfalls. River or stream coming off the mountain, and they're stone rock pools and.
Here's how impersonal. Well, not impersonal, but how the White Mountains. Y2K, right? You remember how everybody said the sky, planes are going to fall out of the sky?
Yeah.
Well, Y2K, I decided I was going to climb Mount Eisenhower and bivouac just above tree line in my bivy sack. And then the next day, I was going to walk over to, across Eisenhower.
This is on December 31st,
December 31st, 1999.
You're climbing a mountain.
I'm bivouacked at 3,800 feet above tree line.
Right.
Happy as a clam.
Yeah.
So I get up there, I do my little, I think I had beef stroganoff that night, mountain house, whatever, backpacker meals, whatever. Make my tea, go to bed, and all of a sudden, I'm in my bivy sack. So have you slept in a bivy sack?
Oh yeah.
It's tight. All of a sudden,
I feel
the sky is exploding. There's bright lights, boom, crash, boom. I'm like, oh my God,
is it.
It's happening.
Yeah.
So I'm, now in a bivy sack. Okay, because now I get it.
You're on the ground?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically it's a cocoon. I mean, you've got a little, but you're sitting in. It's like all it is a cover to cover your sleeping bag. And I'm in a 40 below bag, happy as a clam, completely comfortable. And all of a sudden, I think it's World War II. So I unzip the bivy sack, throw my plastic mountaineering with my Koflax, throw those on, throw my shell on, and I walk over. They're having fireworks at the Mount Washington Hotel.
Yeah.
Where we saw it today.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I'm above the fireworks, so they're coming up and they're exploding below me.
Wow.
So I'm like, well, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I threw my fleece on and stuff, and I sat there. It was like 45 minutes. So yeah,
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, you would think you would have some peace and quiet at 3,800 feet.
Yeah.
December 31st, no such luck.
Yeah.
So the White Mountains get pretty crowded.
They do get pretty crowded.
But those were some of the best fireworks I've ever seen. Well,
Yeah.
Y2K.
Yeah, I mean, they must have done a big show.
Dude, it was 45 minutes of finale. It was just insane.
You know, and then so here's the other thing why I think a little bit of some of the North Maine woods is on the decline. Nobody talks about the North Maine woods that much anymore. If you read canoe kayaking magazines and stuff like that, you look at the top places to go canoeing, Maine barely breaks the list. Everyone's all about the Boundary Waters, Algonquin,
but that's
Canadian, Canadian rivers and
like
wilderness. It's like Canada's the
Bonaventure.
new North. Right, Bonaventure.
Yeah. So why wouldn't the North Maine woods be the Boundary Waters in Minnesota? You know, like what's
not as spectacular, probably. I don't know.
You're at the very southern region of the boreal forest, and I think if people want that true wilderness experience, I think there's a general perception. This is just my philosophy. I mean, just my thoughts on this, right?
Yeah.
You know, I do think there's a little bit of trendiness to Canada is the new north. You know, it used to be go west, young man. Now it's go north, right? To get to true wilderness. And that's absolutely the truth. Like, you're not going to get anything more pristine and unspoiled. The North Maine woods is logging company owned, right? So that land to Allagash, to access the Allagash or the St. John River, it's all, I mean, now the corridors are protected. And this is the other fun joke about the wilderness of, you know, quote unquote, I'm using quotes here, of Allagash, is I think it's only like 50 to 100 yards on either side of the river that's protected as wilderness. Yeah. So when you're paddling, there are times when you can still hear the logging trucks and machinery running.
Really?
Yep.
Over hill, over dale. And you know,
it's kind of like when they log. You know, when you're driving down the highway and you get this nice fence row of trees, but just like 50 feet
beyond.
You know, they're clear cut.
Yeah,
pretty much. Not that no one clear cuts anymore, but I mean, you don't realize that it's like you're not that far from civilization.
You're in an active working force, and you are, quite a ways from civilization. However, you are in a working wilderness, and I think it is still wilderness. And I would say it's about as, the St. John still runs wild. That's not damned.
What about the whole? Wasn't North Maine woods going to be declared or was declared a national monument or something?
Oh, that's outside of Baxter State Park.
Okay.
There's an area by Katahdin. Yeah, what's the name of it? I'm sorry. So on the tip of my tongue,
which one?
The national monument. It's outside of Baxter.
It's like by Patton.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, that's it's
so you got Debskinag Lakes.
There's like three. It's broke up into three. There's the big one, which is it's the woman, the Birch Bees, the Quimby family.
Katahdin Woods and Waters.
Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument.
All right.
Well, that's
Yeah.
KWW.
So there are a lot of those, right? Okay. But we're really talking about that spaciousness above it.
That's another whole podcast.
Yep.
That whole monument
for sure.
Scenario. Yep. We won't even break into that.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to have you back on for that. We're over an hour here now, actually. So
I got time. If you guys are still listening. But anyway, so no, we did that's kind of what we wanted to. We talked about what we wanted to talk about.
We talked about other stuff.
Yeah.
You want to talk about your catamangus?
Catadromous fish.
Catadromous what?
Google doesn't even know what it was.
No.
We did a mini episode last week about indigenous fish in Lake Winnipesaukee.
Or is it now native? Did we
native?
Native.
Well,
for the sake, we'll say native.
They're synonyms, but they have slightly different meanings.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. But what do you think the difference between native and indigenous is?
Well, no, go ahead. What's your opinion on that?
I always use the term native.
Well, most people do.
And you like to say indigenous.
I like to say indigenous because, I don't know, it sounds impressive. No, but when I think of indigenous, realistically, I'm thinking of Australian.
Yeah. See,
Aborigine.
And
I just maybe
you say Aboriginal fish.
That would really. But
Right.
but anyway, so let's say native fish. But so when we started talking about that, I've had a lot of people ask. A lot of questions have come up, like about salmon. Did salmon ever come into Lake Winnipesaukee?
On their own, naturally.
On their own, naturally. And as far as I know, well, let's back up a little bit. So we talked about the catadromous fish, which is like the American eel that lives most of its life in fresh water but spawns in salt water. The opposite of that is the anadromous fish, which lives most of its life in salt water and then spawns in fresh water, like salmon.
Right. Or like that, most people are familiar with salmon.
Shad, alewives, any fish that lives its life in the ocean and then comes and swims up tributaries and spawns in fresh water is an anadromous fish. So,
Anadromous.
Anadromous. Yeah. Yes, I know. We made a little funny on that. But, the correct pronunciation is anadromous, and that's all we're going to say. But anyway, and I hope I'm saying it right.
Sounds good.
I got a guy, my friend Rick, who thank God has patience to listen, and he calls and says, you really ought to say it this way. You really ought to back up on that one. And God, he's kind of a mentor for me actually. Yeah. But anyway, he knows what I'm talking about. So, but take like salmon back, before the dams and so forth, used to swim up the Merrimack, and then as near as from the information I can come up with, when they got to that fork in Franklin, the salmon would continue on up the Pemmy, and the shad would go up into Lake Winnipesaukee, and they would actually. The Native Americans used to. That's where the weirs got its name. The Native Americans would, which is now Paugus Bay, was actually once a river. They would set up boulders in the shape of a W or whatever, and the shad would go up in there and get trapped, and they would harvest the fish. And that's pretty amazing to think that you could actually paddle a canoe in Lake Winnipesaukee and catch a fish that came in from the ocean.
That's pretty wild.
That to me, I don't know why, that blows my mind.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've destroyed because now, once they put the dams like down in Lowell and Lawrence, and there's 6 or 7 in New Hampshire between Winnipesaukee and New Hampshire that have made it impossible for those anadromous fish to come in from the ocean and like they did, say 500 years ago. And there's talk, they've done some work with some of the dams. They've done fish ladders and so forth, and I think they've actually the shad, from what I've read, have actually made it up into New Hampshire, and for somehow they've got a tally of like 1,178 or something. I don't know how they do that, but they've actually the shed. So in theory, if
somebody's there going click, click.
I don't know how they do it, but there is a number and
counter.
They got their paperwork filled out as they come out the ladder.
I don't know.
They got to pass the immigration guy to get into the lake.
They've got an estimate.
Identification.
They've got an estimate that the shad have made it that far. So maybe someday. But the other thing about Lake Winnipesaukee, it's like 5 to 12 feet higher than it was then too. So the whole lake has changed. So even if they could get up through Paugus Bay somehow miraculously, would they still be able to? I don't know. But
if the water level is higher, would that change the temperature of the entire
I would think so.
lake?
I would think it's all temperature. I would think so. Yeah. And see, some
more surface is exposed to sun.
Yeah, and where the argument comes in with the salmon is, the salmon were brought in. We talked about this before, but they were brought in from the St. Croix River back in 1866 or whatever it was, 66, and 67, I think. But what they realized was that Lake Winnipesaukee and tributaries just didn't really provide the right spawning grounds that the salmon needed. That's why they stuck to the Pemmy, and that's why they migrated when they came up the Merrimack. So. Again, back to any salmon in Lake Winnipesaukee is put in there from the hatchery. It's the same fish that swims around the ocean, but it's landlocked, and that's where the term lock comes from. They just can't get back to the ocean. So, it's contrived. The salmon, it's a contrived. But that's what, I guess that's what keeps us going. But, it's just not the same as a fish swimming up from the ocean. To me. Right. I don't know. Would I trade the internet and penicillin for the ability to catch a sea run shad? Probably. But maybe that's me. I don't know. So, there's been a lot of advancement, and for the better, I suppose. But there are some things you just can't fix.
I mean, there are purposes for the dams.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it. Electricity production, the woolen mills. We built. Humans humans are the worst thing for nature, but humans are nature. The problem is, unlike other animals, we change the environment to suit ourselves, whereas the animals have to adapt to the environment.
Right. The
So
animals,
the beaver.
yeah, I was gonna say beavers, but
I think they're the
yeah.
one and only exception to that.
Beaver the missing link.
They might be the
We heard
missing link.
about-
Beaver might be the missing link.
But no, you're right. Beaver do construct, and they're
They will change your environment.
they are very productive. However, they're not building automobiles.
Not yet.
They're not building.
Not that we know.
They're not forging nails to pound wood together. They're using their little mitts and paws and mud. But that's there's a big difference between what.
Yeah, they're not working at AMC.
They're not
Any of the three of them.
at all. Any of
they've
them.
got the movie pass.
But I mean, the byproduct of that is we have a lot of pollution. We build things. It's all driven by production, and through many things. The advancement of medication, the advancement of the automobile, the advancement of computers. I mean, we're sitting here doing you can't have your cake and eat it.
Right.
I never understood that.
What
I feel like if
answer
I have cake, you should be able to eat
I
it.
say buy 2 cakes.
Yeah.
Put one in the fridge and eat the other. That's my answer.
No, because it's you can't have the cake and eat it. If you eat it, you don't have the cake anymore.
Unless you buy 2 cakes
Unless you buy 2 cakes.
and just stay one.
That's-
But if I've eaten it, then I've had the cake.
That's like not using. That's like not using the special china because it's special.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, why have it?
Why
We're not
have
going to use it.
We only bring that out at Christmas. Oh.
So.
No, exactly. This is what we're talking
Okay,
about.
we're getting into silly season now, so
Maybe we should end this.
we're gonna wrap this up. I want to read a quote that Marc provided to us.
Oh yeah, this is about the.
This is Marc Patterson.
It's not. I didn't. It's not my.
Marc Patterson. Well, it's not a quote.
But
Yeah.
we're going to segue through.
He brought it to our attention.
Okay.
It's from John Springer, from his book Forest Life and Forest Trees, from 1851.
Oh,
so
the context
who is
was
John
around-
Springer?
So he. I don't know.
Not
No,
Jerry Springer.
Not Jerry
He
Springer.
wrote.
it's his
He was
grandfather.
one of the early writers about the North Maine woods. So I spend a lot of time reading old books. Like I'm currently reading a book from 1904, I think, called The Penobscot Man, which just really talks about the life of what it was like to be an early lumberjack, if you will, up in the North Maine woods.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. A lot of people think North Maine woods Henry David Thoreau, but to me it was like he's one of the least interesting characters of the North Maine woods.
2 thumbs up on that.
So I like to dive into stuff like this John Springer fellow. So you guys are having a conversation. So just before the quote, right? Put it in the context for anyone who's still listening.
Somebody's listening.
Someone's
One of the
listening.
cameras just shut off.
So
Sorry, I'm having trouble with the connection. Try again in a moment.
yeah.
No, wait a minute. Your Google is from Australia?
It's Aboriginal.
Okay.
It's indigenous.
It's indigenous.
Indigenous
Okay,
Google.
so you guys are having a conversation about have mountain lions ever been seen? And
In Maine, yeah.
In Maine.
It's
Yeah,
mountain
just-
lion, right?
Mountain lion, puma,
Cougar.
Cougar.
Although all the
Cougar, I
same
think was
animal.
Big cat.
the- yeah.
big cat, right? And so
Lynx? Is a lynx a
No,
no,
no?
lynx is different.
Different.
It's a cougar. I think cougar is the term to use, right? For northern Maine.
I think
They are
people will say
cougar.
cougar mountain lion.
I think it was cougar because we made a joke, which
Yeah.
I then cut out of the podcast.
So anyway,
so
so around that
crass.
conversation of whether or not they exist, and then I provide this quote because this is a really cool historical quote before they were driven out of Maine.
yeah,
How natives viewed that particular animal because they were certainly a presence. So now.
So the quote is from a book written in 1851 called Forest Life and Forest Trees. Quote, "There is an animal in the deep recesses of our forest, evidently belonging to the feline race, which, on account of its ferocity, is significantly called Indian devil in the Indian language, the Lunksus, a terror to the Indian, and the only animal in New England of which they stand in dread. You speak of the moose, the bear, and the wolf even,
and the red man is ready for an encounter. But name the object of his dread, and he will significantly shake his bead, while he exclaims, "He all one devil." 1851. I stumbled over bead because I thought, well, that should be head, but why would it be bead?
Right, that's a good question.
Is that a significant?
I'm not.
That's got to be something to do with
whether they
Native
Yeah.
American. That's a good question.
I
don't know.
Question, and it would have been.
We'll have it on the next podcast.
Yeah.
so that tribe would have been Penobscot, or of course there's a lot of Abenaki, but most likely it's Penobscot.
The
more predominant tribe in that area.
Micmac. I know there are Micmacs in Holton.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That is our podcast for August. Thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Working Class Woodsman. We put out 2 videos per week on Wednesdays and Saturdays. The Woodsman's podcast is also available on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, also Podbean. I don't even know what Podbean is, but we're on there. So if you use Podbean, go ahead.
Awesome.
But tell your friends and leave a review, especially on iTunes. Listener Scattergun2 gave us 5 stars out of 5. Thank you. And he says, been following Ed's YouTube channel for a while. He's a likable, knowledgeable guy and has solid content. Thanks, Scattergun.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. For the Woodsman's Podcast, for Ed Butler and Marc Patterson, I'm Max Ledoux, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening.